The Seventh Minute by Claire Rye. Even if she had to, little Emma Jane couldn't possibly choose her most favourite life among all the ones she had lived. Each was unique, each was invaluable, and each had destroyed a small part of her soul. Hope was non-existent, ageing was forbidden, and ownership was an illusion. Yet Emma Jane had no choice. 1 minute since this life had begun. The car cruised smoothly down the highway, its engine purring a gentle hum that seemed to speak with the rhythm of the road. The scenery was stunning, picture perfect under the cloudless sky. Emma Jane's eyes, big and blue, stayed fixed on the clock mounted on the car's dashboard as she watched the inevitable passing of time. 2 minutes since this life had begun. The young woman driving was fully immersed in the moment, singing along to the radio with a smile on her naturally beautiful face, her fingers drumming lightly on the steering wheel, keeping perfect time. She looked so happy and relaxed. It was obvious her life was filled with joy. Emma Jane wished her driver was, instead, a miserable woman. At least that would have made it easier. 3 minutes since this life had begun. A road trip. It was idyllic and perfectly normal, the kind of scene of routine and familiarity where the simple pleasure of life lived. A mother, a daughter, a car ride, repeated 1,000,000 times a day, everywhere in the world. Emma Jane despised moments like these, the stupid, innocent, blissful moments preceding the inevitable. It made her feel sick to her little stomach. "Mummy, I have enjoyed our time together," Emma Jane said wistfully from the back seat, a hint of sadness in her voice. 4 minutes since this life had begun. The young woman looked around. "What are you talking about, darling? Do you need to stop for a pee?" Emma Jane smiled. A toilet break wouldn't help. "You were a wonderful mother. Just remember that." It was all she could offer. 5 minutes since this life had begun. The young mother reached over and turned off the radio, filling the car with contemplative silence. She didn't seem worried, but more curious. None of the books had covered this conversation, and she wanted to navigate it correctly. She took pride in her role as a mother, doing everything in her power to make sure she got it right. Emma Jane wondered if that would change anything. "Are you okay, sweetie? What are you feeling right now? What are you trying to say to me?" the young woman asked gently. 6 minutes since this life had begun. No matter how hard she tried, Emma Jane just couldn't muster up the courage to watch. She turned away, looking out the window. She didn't want to see it coming. As she looked out at the field, she couldn't help but be soothed by the beauty of the vibrant green grass and the tranquil sight of the grazing sheep. She hoped none of them would be hurt. 7 minutes since this life had begun. The brutal impact of the truck propelled Emma Jane forward. She felt a sudden ripping sensation across her soft skin as she slipped through the loose grasp of the seatbelt, peeling the right side of her shoulder clean. The semi-trailer effortlessly cleaved through the car, leaving a jagged tear in its wake, the resulting serrated edge cutting through the young mother's legs like she was a carcass at the abattoir. Blood splattered across the car's interior like a macabre painting. Emma Jane's slight frame crashed with the front seat, the jolt instantly crushing the air from her small lungs. The windscreen felt like a bombardment of tiny knives, relentlessly piercing and slashing at her delicate body as she passed through it. The grazing sheep scattered for their lives, their panicked bleats mingling with the sickening sound of the car crash. Mother was the first to land, tumbling along the grass with impossible speed, each and every contact obliterating her clothes. Emma Jane was next, hitting the gravel road like butter on a cheese grater, her skin shredding on impact. From where she landed, she could see her mother's face. It was ripped to pieces, the youthful beauty replaced with a mangled mess of flesh and exposed bone. Sometimes the others lived, sometimes they died. There were no rules, only suffering. Emma Jane had hoped this one would be a quick death, but as she lay listening to the screams of her dying mother, trapped in the torture of shattered bones and internal bleeding, she was reminded that mercy never did, and never would, play a part in any of her deaths. 1 minute since this life had begun. The man on the couch next to Emma Jane had kind eyes. She saw it in his face, a look that spoke of pride and unconditional love. The road to parenthood had been a rocky one, filled with heartbreak and setbacks. Losing his wife to childbirth had been a crushing blow, but in the tiny, perfect face of his baby girl, he found love again. His heart, once heavy with guilt and fear, now spilled over with happiness. As he placed her hand inside his, Emma Jane could feel every minute of his love for her. She was his, and he was hers, forever. 3 minutes since this life had begun. She looked at his face and his kind eyes. Sometimes she felt responsible for the pain her death would cause. It was unsettling and scary. Emma Jane was too young to grasp the concept of reincarnation, but she understood the notion of rebirth all too well. It was, for her, a merciless rotation, marked by precise cruelty and inescapable torment. The house was clean and smelt like lavender. The windows were wide open, allowing a gentle breeze to waft through the rooms, carrying with it the sweet scent of blooming flowers from the garden outside. 5 minutes since this life had begun. "How about I make us some lunch, baby girl? You hungry?" he asked. Emma Jane wanted to warn him. He would regret leaving her, if only for a second. But warnings never stopped their actions. She was merely a passenger, and warnings only seemed to make her final moments less pleasant. She had nothing but those moments, and she had learnt it was best not to destroy them. "Yes, please, Daddy," she replied. With eager enthusiasm, the man leapt to his feet. A master of culinary arts born out of necessity, he took great pleasure in making child-friendly healthy lunches. 6 minutes since this life had begun. He heard a muffled noise and paused, knife hovering over the chopping board, heart pounding harder. Nothing to fret over, he told himself. Don't let paranoia get the best of you. Just keep making lunch. He resumed slicing the vegetables, but his movements were slower, his ears straining to catch any other sound. The lounge room seemed unnaturally silent, the kind of silence that pressed hard against his chest. Every creak, every sound, felt ominous. 7 minutes since this life had begun. A soft, almost imperceptible whisper slithered through the air, making the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He turned his head slightly, listening intently, but the whisper was gone. As the man took his first step towards the room where he had left his daughter to play, a high-pitched scream pierced the air, shattering his fragile calm. His blood ran cold, and the knife slipped from his grasp, crashing to the floor. The scream reverberated in his mind as his pulse thundered in his ears. He stood rooted to the spot, the world around him closing in. The man on the couch never recovered from his daughter's abduction. The only thing he remembered was that scream, a sound that would echo in his nightmares for the rest of his life. Emma Jane remembered a different story. Every sickening minute of it, screaming for hours through the smelly gag for her father, suffocating slowly on her own breath. The intense agony consumed her whole body until it could take no more. Death had no time limit. 1 minute since this life had begun. Emma Jane stared into the bathroom mirror, wondering how this life was going to end. It was hardly worth contemplating. She looked at herself and her familiar face. Each life was so different, but that adorable face always stayed the same. For a moment, she tried to remember the years that brought her to this point, but she could never seem to focus on the past. Immediately, she could feel the essence of the life, knowing the love and time that had passed, but the details were never clear. Her understanding seemed to be confined only to the emotions that would amplify her pain. For a millennium, little Emma Jane had lived, 7 minutes at a time. She sensed a cold presence in the room, a shadow that had never been there before. It seemed to materialize from the ether. Her reflection began to shift, the familiar face warping into something grotesque and unrecognizable. Panic surged through her as she realized this was not a part of the usual torment. Where was her new family? Where were the others? The shadow grew, tendrils of darkness creeping out from the mirror, wrapping around her like cold, slimy fingers. A demented reflection of herself, now in control of her destiny. How many minutes since this life had begun? She tried to scream, but no sound came out. Her eyes widened in terror as the tendrils tightened, pulling her closer to the mirror. The familiar face was now a twisted, mocking visage, its eyes glowing with a spiteful light. She tried to look away, but the forces of evil held her focus. "Time for your punishment," her morphed reflection growled, its voice a chilling reverberation filling every inch of her mind. How many minutes? How many minutes? Emma Jane could not understand. She was an innocent child, burdened with a tortured existence. Yet, as the shadows whispered of her impending punishment, her hysterical cries filled the bathroom. This life was like no other. The room plunged into darkness, the shadow consuming everything with an insidious hunger. Emma Jane's heart raced as an unseen force gripped her, easily lifting her body off the ground. She struggled, but it was in vain. With a jarring, bone-chilling silence, she was wrenched towards the mirror. The surface, no longer solid, rippled like malicious liquid, and with a final, desperate scream that filled the empty bathroom, little Emma Jane was sucked violently into the cold, unyielding abyss. She had crossed to the other side. The mirror was everything, everywhere, as the bathroom disappeared slowly from view. She was now confronted with countless versions of herself, all trapped, screaming silently, every death replaying over and over, every parent's anguish punching her heart relentlessly. Each reflection a fragment of her soul, all suffering eternally. As the mirror's grip tightened, her mind shattered under the weight of a million lifetimes of agony. The last thing little Emma Jane saw, before her consciousness dissolved, was her own face, twisted in eternal horror, trapped in an infinite chasm of suffering. The cycle was complete, and there would be no new life this time. Little Emma Jane had found her resting place entwined with hell, eternally immersed in its dark, unlimited depths. The mirror would be her only companion, forever reflecting back to her the lives that she never knew she was meant to save. 7 minutes since this death had begun.